Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
This broadcast, we're talking about the new year, right? Goals and expectations for 2020. I think goals are important. It's as good a time as any, especially when your goals involve learning new things, expanding our knowledge base, knowing more. And of course, the Great Courses Plus has you covered there. The Great Courses Plus, a wonderful sponsor of this show, an online learning service with thousands of lectures on a host of topics. Everything from the history of religion to computers, to health and nutrition, to economics, to learning sign language, so much more, taught by an A-team of expert professors from top universities and institutions all around the globe. Reliable instruction in a world that is filled with unreliable claims. With the release of that new Sam Mendes film, 1917, I went and got a primer on the subject with the lecture called Forgotten War, the lasting legacy of World War I. It was an important course on what happened and how it happened and why it's still relevant for America and the world today. Part of my continued goal to learn more in 2020. And I strongly encourage you to join me in this when you sign up for the Great Courses Plus today. For a limited time, they're offering my listeners an entire month with access to the entire course library for free. But to start your free month trial, you got to sign up today using my special URL. So don't wait. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/Seth. Remember, thegreatcoursesplus.com/Seth. It's interesting to watch the personalities of people, the opinions of people as they look ahead to 2020. You've got, the optimists and the pessimists and everybody in between. I know it's really hard at the moment to be optimistic, right? We're just a few days into 2020 and things are already just crazy out there. Watching these out of control Australian wildfires. Devastation. Devastation beyond imagination, really. Really. No one can really imagine what it's like there unless perhaps you're a firefighter on the ground or somebody who's lost their home. I saw somebody had taken the map of Australia and placed it over the U.S. just to show it in terms of scale, land mass, and where the fires are. And it's beyond belief. A part of you dies inside thinking about the tragedy that's happening now. On top of that, you've got the U.S.'s bombing of General Qasem Soleimani in Iran, and those escalations happening right now. Many people thinking, here we go. Right? Retaliations against Americans. Tensions are heightened. Now they've got a martyr. Now we may be going to war, like an all-out war. I don't know. Nobody knows. You've got a nation even more divided than it's ever been with the hawks, the war hawks, the people over on the right, the pro-Trump people are saying that this was a great move because the guy was planning strikes against Americans and he had to be taken out. And other people are like, hey, wait a minute. We've always known about this guy. There's a reason we didn't assassinate him. Because we knew that the cost benefit in the larger chess game, it was not worth it. It was an escalation that would not be in the long run productive. You see those sides clashing against each other. Yes, it's hard to be optimistic at this moment in our history. But there is a part of me that is still optimistic about 2020. I really am. There's a part of me that is still hoping for and expecting great things in 2020. Where do you fall on the spectrum? Do you hold some optimism about the new year? Do you see positive change coming? Are you a pessimist? Do you think, oh, screw it? People have always been idiots. People have always been destructive. We will continue to see the insanity of humanity. We'll continue to see, and they're right to a degree. I mean, in the 21st century, we are still dealing with the anti-vaxxers and the pseudoscientists and the flat earthers and the young earth creationists, the Bible thumpers out there. We're still dealing with the promotion and proliferation of and the privilege of really, really bad ideas. And we've got, all this military tension going on and the tension between, the nationalists and the globalists and us and our allies. And of course, the Middle East has always been a cauldron. I mean, that's not going away. But there's a lot to be encouraged about. I mean, I really want to focus for a few minutes on the things that we can be encouraged about. Some things coming up in 2020 that actually give us something to look forward to. Would that be all right? Can I do that? Would that be therapeutic for you? Fine, I'm going to do it here in just a second, okay? Later on in the broadcast, I'm going to talk to Justin Scott. He is the state director for American Atheists in Iowa. And he has been going out and having these face-to-face conversations with these A-team presidential candidates, the ones we're seeing on stage at the debates and at the rallies, asking them what they're going to do to represent the growing non-religious demographic in the U.S. Like, I'm an atheist. There's a ton of us out here. What are you going to do to represent us as a political candidate? And his experiences are fascinating, so much so that I've asked him to come and be a part of the broadcast to talk about it. What's it like asking Elizabeth Warren this question, Joe Biden this question, and others? What do they say? What's their reaction? Do they blanch? Do they skate around it like a politician would? Do they have a good answer about the non-religious and how they need to be part of the representation of their government, of their congresspeople, of their president? We're going to talk to Justin Scott as part of this broadcast. Fascinating discussion. Hang on for that. I look ahead to the year, though, and there's some really cool stuff that's happening or slated to happen. Some of it was predicted. I saw this Popular Science article that released 10 years ago, and they were looking ahead a decade, saying, well, this is going to happen, and this is predicted to happen, and this is where we're going. And they were surprisingly close on a great many scores. Probably the biggest one was originally scheduled to happen in 2020. I think they pushed it to 2021. It's this lunar base that's being constructed by Japan, constructed by robots for robots is how they say it. I probably misspoke there. It's not being constructed, right? It's a planned construction. It's not happening now. It's on the books. It's a goal that they've set. An article from space.com came out in April of last year. Can robots build a moon base for astronauts? ? Japan hopes to find out. And they've got some diagrams that show, well, there's a person with what looks like some sort of an oxygen pack, life support system. And then these modules, these pods that are constructed and connected, these modules all pieced together like a puzzle, And so they are doing experiments right now in central Japan with these excavators practicing what it would be like to excavate on the moon before they build a moon base. Well, that's kind of wild. Seems like the stuff of science fiction. I mean, we knew it was probably coming, but in 2021? I have a feeling they may end up pushing that date to 2022 or 23, but it's still kind of cool. What else is going on in 2020? We're seeing more and more of these self-driving cars in the news. Are they coming to us? Do we trust them? It's not just the vehicles themselves, but can they communicate with the other vehicles on the road? Some big questions. But, I've seen Minority Report. I've seen what the futurists are saying. It looks pretty cool. The idea of being able just to hang back and be transported from point A to point B. I'm excited about a few big movies coming in the new year. 2020 is going to have a new Bond film. I think Daniel Craig is the best James Bond ever. I know it's something people will argue to their dying day. I know Sean Connery set a high bar, blah, blah, blah. I just think Daniel Craig is the best Bond. And there's a new Bond film, and it appears this one won't suck. And here's my rationalization on that. Because every other one seems to be terrible. Casino Royale was fantastic. Quantum of Solace was terrible. Skyfall was fantastic. Spectre was terrible. So we're due for a good one. They've got a new version of Frank Herbert's Dune coming out that's directed by the guy who did Blade Runner 2049. I'm in for a Dune flick that's done right. Dark and gritty. And there's going to be a new Wonder Woman movie. Harley Quinn is back. Venom is coming back. Godzilla versus King Kong is going to happen this year. Bill and Ted are coming back. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is coming back. I'm even excited about the Top Gun movie. I know Tom Cruise is part of the batshittery that is Scientology, but his stuff is universally good. Really? I mean, the Mission Impossible films are fantastic. Edge of Tomorrow is one of my favorite movies of its genre. And I saw the Top Gun. I mean, it's been, more than 30 years since Top Gun? I gotta go. Maybe it's because I'm kind of an 80s child. Right? I'm gonna have to go see Top Gun. They're doing a TV production of Lord of the Rings. That starts in 2020. The production, I think it actually releases in 2021. But it's going to be major. As a Lord of the Rings fan, I've got high hopes that it won't be The Witcher. They're doing a Star Wars series beside The Mandalorian, and I've enjoyed The Mandalorian. They're doing a TV adaptation of Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits. I love that movie. How about Picard in 2020? That's reason to be optimistic about the new year. Star Trek's Jean-Luc Picard is going to be back. I might even have to subscribe to CBS All Access or whatever they call it. How about our technology? Those OLED displays that are now more and more common. These paper-thin displays, these bendable displays that you can even make wallpaper out of them. You know, it's like, is it Total Recall? That opening scene where he's having breakfast and the entire back wall is a TV screen that he can turn into scenery or the morning news or whatever he wants it to be. I mean, this is upon us. Yeah, they're expensive. I mean, I think the Sony one that's most popular runs $4,500 right now, the Sony OLED television. But that's going to come down. That's like the pocket calculators when they first came out. They were crazy expensive, and now you can get one for 99 cents, right? We're already seeing those OLEDs on the Galaxy X9 and the iPhone X. They already use the technology. Google's working on a cool new AI speech-to-speech translator. So it's like a Babel fish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you speak into your phone and it can, in theory, translate in real time and speak to the person in the language that you prefer. Now, granted, we have, a lot of languages to cover, but how cool is that? I mean, imagine how much closer it brings the human condition, if we are able to overcome this language barrier. I mean, that's amazing. Renewable energy will rise in 2020. The Wall Street Journal just did a report that said they saw a tipping point with renewable energy in 2019, where renewable energy surpassed coal for the first time ever as a way of generating power in the United States. Wind and solar generated approximately 50% of total U.S. renewable electricity. And that's a trend. We're going to see more and more of that. More sustainable options in the new year. How about those artificial limbs? It used to be when somebody had lost a limb, they just stuck a hook on the end, on the stump, for Pete's sake. And now, not only do you have these limbs that are responding to electrical signals in the brain, but they've got this concept called, is it myomimetic or myomimetic feedback? Where if someone touches the artificial skin or e-skin, it sends these signals to the nerves just above the attachment point of the artificial limb of the prosthetic. And it tricks the brain into thinking it is being touched, or actually maybe communicates to the brain that it's being touched, meaning that your prosthetic could have, perhaps it already has, to some degree, real-time tactile contact with the physical world and communicates to the brain. That's amazing. There's going to be a new Xbox and PlayStation this year. Video gamers have plenty of reason to get excited. Cannabis lovers should be exciting because that industry is exploding. I live in Jesustown, USA. Right? Tulsa, Oklahoma. I couldn't have imagined this a decade ago. But now that they have legalized medical marijuana in this state, most of the billboards that I see out there are cannabis shops. Right? Dispensaries. They're everywhere. Now they're going to be weeded out. This is literally going to be an oversaturation of the market, and not everybody's going to survive. Probably the big corporations are going to come in and find a way to take over, as they usually do. But I mean, people used to wig out about weed. They used to lose their minds about weed. And now, we've got Oklahoma, red state Oklahoma, promoting weed on billboards, on streets and highways all across the place. It's wild. Did you see that the XFL is going to try again in 2020? The XFL Football League. Anybody remember the first incarnation of the XFL? Started by Vince McMahon, World Wrestling. And they were going to break the rules and try all these other things. And the XFL launched big and just exploded like the Hindenburg in a terrible way. I mean, it exploded, meaning it melted down. The XFL, nobody wanted it. It was poorly managed. And so it lasted a year, and they're going to try again in 2020. It says it's going to fix all the problems that it had, 19 or whatever years ago, and it's going to try. How do you feel about the XFL? I mean, I'm at least curious to see if people want football in the spring. I kind of think they enjoy having one season out of the year. You have fall means football. That's part of our mindset about that particular sport. They're going to open the new tallest building in the world in 2020. In Saudi Arabia, of course, 3,280 feet tall. Sucker cost $1.4 billion. It's called the Jeddah, Jeddah, the Jeddah Tower. By the way, in 2020, in February, Saudi Arabia is going to host the world's richest horse race, the Saudi Cup in Riyadh. 14 contenders, a grand prize winner to a single winner, $10 million. $10 million to one person. There's going to be a new Hunger Games book, not a film, thank goodness, but a book in 2020. Suzanne Collins releases it in May of this year. It's a prequel. It's going to take place like 65 years before the storyline of the original novel. We're going to see more and more of 5G. Right? We see some 5G, but internet speeds continue to go faster and faster. And how long until they just become real time and there's nowhere to go? Right? When do you hit the technology wall where there's just nowhere else to go? I don't know the answer to this question. 5G in 2020. We get an extra day this year because it's a leap year. You got an extra 24 hours to get all your stuff done. 2020 is the year of the census. We're going to have a census. They do it once a decade. This is where the country is supposed to count every United States resident. This is supposed to be used in redistricting and determining the number of congressional seats and who's going to get federal funding and how much money. It's going to be a solar eclipse in 2020. It'll happen on the 21st of June. It starts from Central Africa, goes through Saudi Arabia, northern India, northern China. It's going to end in the Pacific Ocean. I mean, if you're in those areas, that's going to be something. We get some Olympics in 2020. The Tokyo Summer Olympic Games start July the 24th. And of course, we've got the presidential election. That's going to be a sport unto itself. And this provides me a great segue into a conversation with the state director of American Atheist in Iowa, Justin Scott. This guy has been out and about talking face to face with presidential candidates about how they're going to represent atheists and non-religious people. And I just had to talk to him here on the podcast, and he joins us. Justin, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Seth.
You're kind of a fly in the ointment, aren't you? I mean, you're just a pain in the ass out there. Right? You are
absolutely
becoming a known face in many political circles, right?
It's pretty fun. I mean, especially having no formal training in this, kind of just walking out the door one day and saying, let's do this. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Now, for those who aren't familiar with your work, you can describe it better than I can. What is this? What are you doing out there?
Yeah, basically being a normal citizen. I have no superpowers. Like I said, no special training. And I just go and hold elected officials and candidates to account. I basically put my atheism out there in front of everybody and say, what are you going to do about it?
All right. So you go up to a candidate and you're like, I'm an American and you are supposed to represent me along with everybody else. How are you going to do that?
Absolutely.
And the response
and it doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the persuasion, doesn't matter the political affiliation. A lot of people call me out and say, "Oh, you're just a liberal snowflake atheist. You're supporting all of the folks on the left." And it's like, no, this 2020 race has shown that we have to be just as hard on the left as we are on the right.
The subtitle of my show is How Screwed Are We? So you're out there talking to our options, or many of our options for 2020. You tell me, how screwed are we, Justin? How bad is it, or how good is it?
Yeah, I'm going to try to take a glass half full approach, or glass just needs refilled approach on this.
Okay.
I don't think we're as bad off as what a lot of people think. Now, obviously, with the individuals running our country, I definitely understand when people are scared to death of the future of our country. But I think given how things are changing, given how this administration has even influenced folks, I guess the cool kids use the word woke. I don't know if I'm woke yet. I don't even know what that means. But, from what I've heard of the candidates, especially when I hit them with some really tough questions, I'm at least cautiously optimistic. But again, it's going to take more work. It's not going to just change overnight. It's not going to change just because some random guy in Iowa is doing this type of work. It's going to have to repeat itself over and over and over again up until November, and then even afterwards.
You and I aren't telling anybody how to vote, right? We're talking about your experience as a secular citizen challenging specific candidates with questions about secular citizens. Do you think that's a fair way to say it, Justin? We're not trying to say vote for this person because they said this. We're just giving them some backstory, right?
Absolutely. And, I've done the whole you should vote for XYZ, and I'll tell you, it's actually more enjoyable to be kind of away from that and looking at issues and looking at kind of our community from the 30,000-foot approach, because then it really is looking at it through a totally different lens. And even just this morning before we set up this discussion, I had a very conservative atheist scream at me saying, I don't have time for humanism, whatever the hell that means, and saying, I don't have time for you liberal snowflakes. And I said, wait a minute, can we just come together as humans? Can we come together as fellow humans that agree that there's probably no God, and what are we going to do to fix our country?
How does our non-belief in God's translate into something actionable that allows us to live in a more rational world, which often sort of becomes humanism, I think. But
and I think there's a huge opportunity here, too, for those on the left, those on the right, those in the middle, and those out in whatever field they're standing in, to come together and say, you know what, we're done with this. We're done with our secular government being hijacked. We're tired of our godless constitution being perverted. Let's come together no matter what we disagree on and focus on what it is we agree on. And so one of the things I've been trying to push in this election cycle is we have to unite against the religious right. And that includes atheists with humanists, atheists with religious folks, and everybody in between. It's got to happen.
Non-Christians, those who aren't represented by the Christian theocrats, you got the Paula Whites and the Franklin Grahams and everybody else parading around in the White House. You've got Trump. And we have to say that, Trump is pandering to the theocrats, to the evangelical right, to his To his fervent base, this is really all he's got left, or mostly all that he has left. And he's talking about the United States as if it is a religious country and not a country that represents all faiths and none. And so this is what we oppose.
You're exactly right. And, you know, kind of like we laughed about earlier before starting the interview is we can't sit back and be internet warriors. We can't sit in the cesspool that is Twitter and just try to yell and shout with our caps lock on. You know, we've got to go out and do the work. We've got to go out and let these people know and let their supporters know, listen, your version of America is not going to happen. It never happened before. This whole leave it to Beaver, you know, white America, white Christian America, we've got to remind these folks that in 20 to 30 years, that's not going to be anywhere existent, and that's okay. You know, the more diverse this country gets, the better off we are all going to be.
You have any anecdotes for me? You've had encounters out there with some A-team front-running politicians. Talk to me. What happened?
You know, it's been a very wild ride compared to 2016. 2016, I was focusing on a lot of Republican, a lot of conservative candidates. This cycle has been much different because now you're getting more liberal, more Democratic candidates. And so the first candidate that I really made a big splash with this cycle was Elizabeth Warren. I had seen an article that had ran on the Friendly Atheist page that Hemant Mehta runs. I don't think it was a Hemant write-up, but it asked, when will a Democratic candidate or any candidate hire a non-religious outreach director or a secular outreach director? And I thought, man, that's a perfect question, because you see folks like Pete Buttigieg. He was the first. He went out and hired one to go into these religious communities, try to rally them to him and his issues and his stances. And so I thought, well, here's a front runner. She's going to be 10 minutes from my house. I need to go ask her and put her on the spot. And I will admit, she kind of tiptoed around it, but that was the beauty in it, is that her hesitation allowed me to connect with her Iowa team. We have an ongoing conversation about this. I've been able to follow up with Elizabeth about it as well. You can check out the video online. It's on a couple of Facebook Lives. You can also Google search for Hemat's post about, you know, his perspective on how it all went. But then I've been able to use that same idea, and I was able to confront Joe Biden about it. And interestingly enough, I got to do that in my hometown, which is 2.5 hours away from where I live now, and I don't really ever go back. So that was kind of fun. And we later discovered that when I asked Joe, you know, would he hire one, he not only kind of fibbed on it, but totally admitted or tried to act like he didn't have a religious outreach director. So that in and of itself wasn't so much the answer that he gave me, but it was the fact that he didn't even understand whether he had one or not. And so I'll let people draw their own conclusions. Did he actually lie to me? Was it just a slip up? But, you know, getting these questions out there is so important because we can see, are they willing to answer it? Do they run from it? Do they take it head on? And lastly, the thing about Elizabeth Warren that I really loved, and no, this is not an endorsement of her, but the thing that I really loved was she just kind of admitted, like, holy cow, I've never been asked that. I don't even know how to answer this. And I thought that right there was one of the biggest compliments that I've ever gotten on the campaign trail, is having this very polished candidate running for the highest office in the world look at me and say, whoa, I never thought about that. I'll have to get back to you.
It also draws a big circle around the fact that we have this Pew Religious Landscape Survey reporting that 22.8% of the population of the United States is what they call religiously unaffiliated. Doesn't mean they're an atheist, but I mean, they're not religious people. This demographic is massive. And yet this is the first time she has actually been challenged. Like, are you going to be representing the non-religious in the United States, you know, as both the leader and servant of the people? And it's the first time. It tells you a lot about how far we have to go in terms of activism within atheist and secular communities.
And I don't want to ever try to compare what we are facing with what the LGBT community has gone through, as well as what the African American and Black community has gone through. But those two efforts inspire the hell out of me in terms of how much work it's going to take, how much unity it's going to take, how much just pure fire it's going to take to try to get people riled up about this and to get them out the door and engaged. And I feel like we're doing a good job, but we need to do a great job at this.
You have a chance to cross paths with Andrew Yang. I had somebody ask a question about him being challenged, I guess online about he has an atheist or he has a religious spouse, and that they think he may be an atheist or he may at least be open to representing non-religious people in the United States. Any thoughts on Yang?
Yes. Actually, I got to see Andrew Yang maybe about a week ago, and I got to see him twice in the same day. He was about 10 miles apart from one another, from the two different events. And so the first event that he went to was a religious town hall. It was supposed to be an interfaith event. Interestingly enough, they had two Christian pastors. How does that translate to being interfaith?
It's interfaith as long as you're, intertwined in Christianity, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was really neat. He didn't take questions from the audience, but of course, in typical me fashion, I went up to him to get a photo and said, "Hey, first, let me ask you a question on camera." And he said he'd have no problem bringing on an atheist VP. He'd have no problem putting an atheist in his cabinet, which I thought was great. Then I asked him a unique question, which, again, going back to Hemet kind of covered this for anybody that wants to see this. I said, "You mentioned in your talk that you grew up in a secular household, but yet it was your wife that kind of pulled you towards Christianity. What would happen during this race if all of a sudden one day you just woke up and went, you know what? I'm an atheist. Like, I'm going to give up every bit of my religion. I'm going to give this up." I said, "Would that change what kind of candidate you are? Would you drop out? Would you continue to run? Would you lie about it? Like, what would you do?" And, he handled it very well. He's very polished. He kind of said, "Well, I have my values and I would stick to that." I thought that was impressive. The neatest part too was after I put my phone down, then he looked at me, shook my hand. He said, "Dude, I just want to let you know I'm good with atheists." I said, "Oh, I know." And he said to me, or he started asking, like, "What do the numbers say again? Like, where are we at? What's the number of atheists that are out there?" And so it was that genuine concern. It was him wanting to know, who are we? Where are we? But with that said, then later in the day, I was hopeful that he was going to bring it up. He was going to talk about it. He was going to say, "Hey, and just so you know, if you don't worship anything, I got your back." He never did bring it up at the second event. But when I got home that night, I noticed that about 20 minutes after I met with him at the first event, he had sent out a tweet that basically said, "No matter what you worship or if you don't worship, this country's for you." And I thought, okay, that was literally like 15 minutes in between from the time I shook his hand until he jumped on Twitter to send that out. I thought that was so amazing. And it goes to show that these candidates will listen to you. They will give you the time of day.
Anybody else run across your radar real fast? I mean, we're on, I don't want to monopolize your time, but
no, this is good.
Of note that, from the campaign trail in regard to secular Americans and the candidates themselves?
Going back to Julian Castro, I got a chance to talk to Julian, and I asked him about Latino and Hispanic atheists. And he said, I don't see atheism as a bad word. I think we need to understand these people and what issues are important to them. And I thought that was a very touching answer. I'm yet to run across Bernie Sanders. I'm hopeful that I'll get to do that before the Iowa caucus. I've ran into Joe twice, Elizabeth twice, and
you ran into them, meaning you drove to them and purposefully ran into them. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. No, I did not run them over.
So, are they getting to the point now where they see you and they're like, "Holy shit, there's Justin," and oh my God, here we go again. Is that happening yet, or what?
So the second time I saw Vice President Biden, when they kept asking, "Does anybody have a question?" I shot up out of my chair. I raised my hand. I make it obvious that I'm there to ask him a question. And he made a joke at this second event where he said, "Oh man, I better get out of this guy's way. He's big and he could hurt me." And I went, "Well, I'm not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm just here to ask you a damn question,
What is it that we need to be doing? I mean, you're a boots on the ground guy, and I'm interested in your perspective when it comes to trying to make a more secular, a less superstitious United States, and then, the world, obviously, but we're talking in the context of the election coming up. What do we do? Like, how can we support this effort to challenge candidates to represent the non-religious in this country?
It's the $1 million question. And it's the question that we've been trying to tackle for at least the last 50, 60 years. But I think, given my experience, this is what I would say, and I say this with all the love in the world: get over whatever fear you have. And don't get me wrong, I understand that for some atheists, they cannot come out publicly. Don't come out publicly. Create a fake account on Twitter if you need to. Stick to what you feel comfortable with. But if you live, especially in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and you are willing to take this on and you are willing to put yourself out there and just say, listen, there's atheists and we're on the rise. What are you going to do to represent us? Just getting that out there in a room full of people that probably never thought that an atheist was going to show up and do it, you will not believe the amount of support you will have afterwards. And even if they either don't take your question or it doesn't generate any headlines, you've at least taken a step to normalizing being an atheist. And that means the world, because you may inspire the next atheist to go out and try this. The next atheist that's not listening to this show may be motivated to do something because of your activism, something that you did. You don't need any special training. I would be happy, though, to cover this with anybody that's interested. Just go out and ask, I'm an atheist. What are you doing for me? Why should I vote for you? Why should we vote for you? That'll get the ball rolling, and hopefully somebody else will pick up and run with it after that.
It's interesting, too. This is true just outside of election circles. It's one of the reasons why I think, those people who are putting themselves out and saying, I don't believe in a God anywhere, may not realize who's watching and who might be standing next to them, who's going on a journey, or they've been under the radar or something else. You are giving them courage. I mean, we can probably all think of people in our lives who embolden us. And we thought, holy shit, they're not afraid. I'm not alone. I can say something. And there's, I think, real utility in that. You mentioned the caucuses. They're coming up, and they're coming up fast. What are we talking about, Justin?
Talking about February 3rd here in Iowa. And all the eyes are going to be on Iowa, but then right away, within the next month, then you have New Hampshire, followed by, I believe it goes Nevada and then South Carolina. I could be wrong on that, but we have a tremendous opportunity to at least make a chink in the armor. If we're talking Mandalorian or we're talking all these battle shows, Game of Thrones or The Witcher, things like that.
Now, help me out, though. I mean, I hate to interrupt, but the significance of the caucus is what?
So it's a very weird thing. I've taken part in two of them. It's less of a vote and it's more of like a community popularity contest. And so you literally show up, they count how many people are in the room, and then your candidate has to get a certain percent. I believe it's 15% of the support. And I guess this year the state of Iowa Democratic Party changed it up where they're only going to do one round of reorganizing. So that means you walk in, you get to your corner, whichever candidate you're going to support, they count the numbers, and if your candidate's not at 15%, they basically yell, okay, time to reorganize. And at that point, you can either go to a different candidate, you can kind of dig your heels in and say, no, I'm going to stay here, or you can go home. And so after that first realignment, then they go back through and they recount it, and they have delegates that are up for grabs. And I don't want to bore people with what's going on in Iowa, but the gist is this election cycle, there could be technically two winners of the Iowa caucus. The candidate that gets the most initial support across the state, or the person that's able to say, hey, after that first reorganization, I was everybody's second choice. So therefore I'm the coalition builder. So I think for me as an Iowan, that initial report of who got the most support at the first part, and as well as who got the most support overall, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes forward. You could have two candidates saying, hey, I won Iowa. I don't care what the polls say. I don't care what the media says. And then we'll kind of get back to normal with all the other primaries. And then Super Tuesday will hit. And I think by then you'll be narrowed down to probably three or four candidates, I bet.
It's going to be a long, wild year, isn't it? Are you,
it's going to be fun.
Are you optimistic about 2020? Are you still a glasses half full kind of guy on this?
I have 3 kids and they keep me grounded. I mean, it scares the hell out of me to think of the world they're going to get into, but I look at the activism that I've tried to do, and I try to tell my kids, listen, take your problems head on. Don't sit back and wait for somebody else to change the world for you, because it's not going to happen. So I could sit here and piss and moan and say, well, I don't like who's in the White House, or I don't like who's running for office. But where does that get us? I don't want to go on a political rant here, but I think there were so many votes that were tossed aside in 2016 out of whatever people want to say, protest or whatever. I feel like we have a huge opportunity. Even if the candidate that you love doesn't get in, can you at least see a candidate that's willing to listen to us, that's willing to work with us, that with the right amount of pressure and conversation, would be willing to say, hey, you know what? You atheists aren't so bad after all. Let's chat. Let's do lunch. Let's see if we can make the world a better place.
I'm reminded of that saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And I think there's a lot of application to that. Sometimes we're so busy trying to get the perfect solution that if it doesn't go our way, we don't support the good. And so whatever that means to you, I will leave it up to you. Justin Scott, the Iowa State Director for American Atheist. If somebody does want to participate and they want some of your tutelage, best way to get in touch with you is how?
Yeah, all different kinds of ways. Find me on Facebook, Justin Scott, nothing fancy to that. I'm on Twitter at Iowa Atheist 247, as well as my email address, justinscott@atheist.org, O-R-G. I'd be happy to do a video chat. I'd be happy to do webinars with groups across the country. I'd be happy to take phone calls. Really, I want to make myself available however I can.
Now, you're a brave man putting that in from all the info right here because,
Absolutely.
I think it's an exciting thing that you are going to get some response from this. And I'll put your Twitter link and your email in the description box of the show. For your activism, thanks, brother. Thanks for giving us the update. And we may have to talk again here after some of this stuff goes by and reassess where we're at and where the candidates are at and see if anybody's actually acknowledged the atheist in a significant and meaningful way. And this is a work in progress. And so I appreciate your input on it, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And I just, again, want to put it on record that if it wasn't for you in this show, I probably wouldn't be out here doing what I'm doing. So I really appreciate everything that you do for the community. So keep it up.
That's huge, brother. Thank you so much for the kind words. Happy New Year, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Seth.
I'm going to take a real short break. I'm going to come back and we'll open the switchboard, get some calls from our listeners talking about their expectations, their hopes, their fears for 2020. What's your take? Are we circling the drain, or do you have optimism? Are you expecting good things in 2020? What are you looking out for? We're going to get into it right after this. Hang on. Let's save some money here in the new year, especially on razors, which can get way too expensive. But fortunately, at $2 a cartridge, Harry's saves you money all year long. And new customers get $5 off a Harry's trial set when you go to harrys.com/thethinkingatheist. You really think a good shave needs gimmicky stuff? The heated handle or the flex ball? Of course not. And Harry's knows this. Harry's gets back to the essentials of a great shave with high-quality ergonomic handle design, a 5-blade razor cartridge, no middleman, and the guarantee that if you don't love your shave, just let them know. They will give you a 100% refund. Harry's is not just a wonderful and welcome supporter of this broadcast, but Harry's is genuinely constantly hitting the premium quality bar while saving my listeners money on a great shave. Harry's has a special offer for listeners of my show. New customers get $5 off a trial set at harrys.com/thethinkingatheist. You get a 5-blade razor, a weighted handle, foaming shave gel with aloe, and a travel cover. Join the millions of guys who have already switched and go to harrys.com/thethinkingatheist to claim your offer. Patrons of my broadcast get this show totally commercial-free, and they get it a couple of days early. Thank you so much for signing up and becoming a patron at patreon.com/Seth Andrews. Talking here about your hopes and fears, your expectations for 2020, as we go back to the switchboard and talk to some of our listeners. 580. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. What's your name?
Hey, my name's Christian. I'm sitting up here at Spokane, Washington.
Christian, your thoughts on 2020?
Well, I think that we're going to see a major change in the economy. I know that after the Depression, I think in the 50s, the government ended up taxing. Granted, the tax rates were higher, and then the corporations were making less money, but the government was actually funded properly, and they could afford to spend their money on the people. And I think either that's going to happen, and that's an optimist point of view, I think. But either that's going to happen or we're going to see a great crash. I'd imagine in 2020 or soon after, there's going to be a crash, or we're going to see a giant shift in economic power to the middle class.
You foresee, is this just a gut feeling? You foresee we're either going to have an amazing year or we're going to have a radioactive year. It's going to be an extreme case one way or the other?
Yeah, because obviously the stock market's going to crash soon. I don't know how soon, but it is going to crash because we are going to have that crash that is going to obviously provide opportunity for the lower classes or the working class to buy stocks at lower prices, or at least people with some sort of expendable income might be able to buy stocks at a lower price.
The challenge I have is that the stock market is not the economy. What's the statistic?
Right, yeah. It's not an indicator for the people that are less fortunate.
More than half of Americans don't even own stock, and most of the stocks are owned by a very, very, very small percentile.
Yes.
So, I mean, the stock market, it affects everybody in various ways. You base this on an examination of the market? Gut feeling? What?
Yes.
What?
So, because we've had it so poorly for the last, and I say poorly in that we're seeing all the money go to the top. Obviously, there's a bubble, and once that bubble pops, it's either the rich walk out like they did in 2008 with their pockets full of the taxpayers' money, or we are going to see all of that money fall back to the people.
All right. Well, I appreciate your input, and I hope you have a great new year, my friend.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, take care. Hell, I'm not an economist. I was looking at this PolitiFact article that was quoting a Gallup survey. 54% of people who were surveyed in America owned stocks either directly or as part of a fund. So, at 54%, I guess you could say that the majority of Americans have stock or mutual funds or some kind of retirement account. There was a report in the Chicago Tribune that said nearly half of the country has 0% invested in the stock market, according to the Federal Reserve, and numerous surveys by groups such as Gallup and Bankrate. That means people have no money in pension funds, 401ks, IRAs, mutual funds, etc. They don't have individual stocks in companies like Coca-Cola, Facebook, Apple, etc. Wall Street, they say, is not Main Street. Anyway, that's the report. I'll let the economists and the armchair economists haggle over this one in the comments section. 504, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hello, Seth. This is Wade.
Talk to me, Wade.
In the New Orleans area. Okay. Well, my prediction and the thing I want to mention for 2020 is election year. And it's not just for president, but all over the board. And something amazing is happening here in Louisiana that I would like to share. And that is that we have an African-American Democratic candidate who has a chance of actually doing something against the Republican madman named Bill Cassidy, who is the senator. This African-American Democrat's name is Antoine Pierce from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he is running a very, very good ground game right now, developing support, and I am cautiously optimistic that red Louisiana might get a renewed infusion of brain cells. But in terms of politics, the idea that an African-American Democrat might even, make a dent in the Republican politics as a state, as I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that Antoine Pierce might do it.
Well, something to watch in 2020. I hope the new year is a good one, and all my best to you and yours, okay?
Want to see the blue wave happen.
Thank you, Wade. Take care of yourself.
Okay.
Somebody in the chat said something. Oh, let me just read it. Tom in the chat said, I hate it when people lump religion and the right automatically. I'm far more right than left and atheist. Politics have nothing to do with my religious or lack of beliefs. Tom, in a perfect world, that would be correct. But the right in the United States at this moment is being largely defined by evangelical Christians who are promoting a theocracy. This is one of the reasons that we saw the Alabama anti-abortion measures. Even if you are anti-abortion for another reason, you have to acknowledge that the legislation that was passed in Alabama was passed under religious language. You are seeing Trump surrounding himself with the evangelicals in the White House as they surround him in the Oval Office, laying hands on him to pray with prayer meetings inside the halls of power, funded by taxpayers who are not necessarily Christian. You're seeing, I think it was Barr, Attorney General Barr, who is on record talking about his fears of a secular America. He thinks this is the downfall of civilization. In his mind, Christianity, his particular pet religion, his particular deity, is the secret to health, wealth, happiness, safety, prosperity. So he is informing what he's supposed to be doing as a representative of all of us, but he's informing it with a single religion, a huge violation of the church-state line. Catherine Stewart and Carolyn Fredrickson wrote an article just published a few days ago in the New York Times that profiled William Barr, the Attorney General, and how he once gave that infamous speech at the University of Notre Dame Law School where he blamed secularists for moral chaos, immense suffering, wreckage, and misery, right? This is a guy who believes that if you're not a Christian, you are on the slippery slope straight to hell. In fact, that's the title of the article. Bill Barr thinks America is going to hell. And the article lays out how Barr is essentially promoting a Christian nationalist movement. He's trying to co-opt the entire freaking government for his pet religion. Is Bill Barr a Democrat? Of course not. Bill Barr is a prominent Republican. And this is a Republican problem. I know it bothers my Republican listeners when I say something like that. I'm not saying that all Republicans are theocrats. I'm not saying that everybody who has an R after their name or is fiscally conservative or whatever is in league with the evangelical right. But I am saying that the evangelical right is forefront in the party, in the GOP right now, in defining it for everybody else. It's a religious exercise, and it has to be opposed. And comment section is going to crucify me, I'm sure. Why do you have to always talk about liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats? You know, I'm like, they have danced over each side of the church-state line for so long that it's impossible not to talk about it. Are we seeing a candidate running for president infusing a specific religious message, pandering to a religious base, trying to get elected, trying to achieve the halls of power on the Democratic side? Right now, it's a uniquely Republican problem. Are we seeing the anti-science rejection of things like vaccines and climate change data and more? Are we seeing that propagated on the Democratic side? Well, right now, it's a uniquely Republican problem. Are we seeing the overreach of using taxpayer money to fund private religious institutions selling Christianity? Is that a Democratic platform? Right now, it is exclusively a Republican problem. Sorry. I didn't make it this way. It's just the way it shakes out. And as a humanist, as someone who is pro-science, as someone who is more every day, more of a globalist, certainly not a nationalist, I lean that direction, and that informs the broadcast. If it drives you crazy, I don't mean for it to, but I just think if you're going to fight the religious right now, you've got to address politics and the infestation of the religious right into the GOP. 803, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Oh, hello. This is Addie.
Hi, Addie. Thanks for waiting on me. What's on your mind? What are your thoughts about the new year?
Well, I just think that the new year it's fun to get excited about it, but it's kind of just made up, you know? It's not really, it's just a trip around. Cool, and it's a good way to mark things. But I guess I just like to think more, and I wish I would do this myself, instead of, setting goals or, trying to analyze things for the new year, like that's something you can do every month, or every week, or every day.
So you're saying that it's kind of an arbitrary date, the calendar date of January 1st. There is always a good opportunity to set the goal, make the pledge, try to rededicate yourself to some kind of achievement. Doesn't have to be in January. You don't put much credence in the New Year's resolution.
No, I used to, but less and less every year. And it sounds a little pessimistic, but I don't think it is.
No, I don't think that's pessimistic.
Maybe it's realist.
Most people break their New Year's resolutions, but I think, it's almost never too late to do the right thing, is it? It's almost never too late to embrace a better idea and put away a bad one. So whether it's July 1st or January 1st or whatever, whether you're young, old, rich, poor, whatever color of the rainbow, I'd like to think we take whatever opportunity to embrace the best ideas the soonest we can. I think that's got merit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And whatever works for you. If the new year motivates you, make your plans and, around the new year. But if you think about it, you can do that any time of the year. You can have a new days, new weeks, new hours resolution. I don't know.
All right.
Kind of a little inspiring to think of it that way to me.
I like it. Your life, your rules. I hope the new year is good for you. Thanks for calling the show.
Thank you. You too.
Let's see you. I like I don't call them New Year's resolutions, but I like, the fact that it's, we draw a big circle around it. It's culturally a demarcation of the new year. And, we've made a pledge, like in our house, we're trying to be healthier. We're trying to get more active. I used to play a lot of tennis. I had tennis elbow surgery, which was a great excuse to stop playing. And for the new year, we've decided we're going to reintegrate ourselves back into the tennis community. We're going to get back on the court. We're going to get our hearts pumping. We're going to get in better shape. We're going to just try to feel better. And the new year has helped us to frame that. So we found utility in that. But she's right. It's just a day. It's just a moment. And you can pick whatever moment, whatever occasion, whatever circumstance frames your decision and use that. I've got a Skype call. There is no name. It just says anonymous. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hello, Seth. It's Rosemary.
Rosemary on Skype. Thanks for calling the show. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I was, worried about our elections with Boris getting back in and him being like a mini Trump. But then I was thinking, well, look at the policies, and he's going to build 20 new hospitals. He's going to staff them as well, so that's more nurses, more jobs, and more police. And I thought, well, let's see if he does it. Something to look forward to. See if he actually keeps his word. And, hopefully, touch wood, he does.
So you're not scared or discouraged about Johnson? Well,
I was when I woke up and, it was a bad day, but, you try and look on the bright side, because if he does, keep to his promises, then yes, I still wouldn't vote Tory because, I'm a Labour born and bred. I've always voted Labour, but I'm just hoping that he will do something good for our country and keep his promises, because when they Brexit, they had a big bus with, we're going to give like 200 million a year to the NHS, and then of course they broke that promise. So hopefully he will actually build the 20 new hospitals that we need and staff it. So I'll hopefully, I'm touching wood.
Yeah, I think we call it knock on wood in the States. You guys say touch wood for good luck?
Yeah, touching wood.
Oh, we need some of that in the States. Well, let's all touch wood.
Yeah.
This sounds like a double entendre. Rosemary, Happy New Year. I so appreciate you. I don't know really very much about UK politics. We're watching what's happening with Brexit and everything else. But, I'm hoping for good things. I'm hoping something comes out of the smoke and the ash, and you guys will end up, in a good place. It's going to be a wild ride. So you be careful out there, okay?
Yeah, I hope so as well. Okay, thanks very much, Seth.
We covered Brexit a little bit in our end-of-year broadcast. Wild over there. I mean, the implications of Brexit. I saw a documentary about just logistically the challenges of leaving the European Union, and it just makes your brain explode. I've got 505 on the switchboard. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Francesca. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Francesca, Happy New Year. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm calling in about the election in global politics.
Here we go. Look, let me buckle up. Let me fasten myself in. Okay, I'm prepared. Hit me.
So, with global politics, I've seen it happen too many times where the only reason why someone's voting for a candidate is because they don't want to see the other candidate in office. What I say to that is, if you don't like your candidate and you don't like the other candidate, third party's always an option. Third party is not always a wasted vote. Third party can help save this republic. To the U.S.-based voters listening in, I don't think I need to say it, but if you don't like Trump and you don't like whoever the Democratic candidate is, and the only reason you're going to be voting for Trump is so that the Democratic candidate doesn't win, consider casting for a third party. Yes, it might go to a runoff. Yes, your candidate might not win. But at least if in a Senate runoff, it's out of our hands.
I like the idea, in theory, I like the idea of someone giving us options. And even if the third party candidate doesn't win, to say, look, 7% of Americans were dissatisfied with both at the polls. But the reality is that a vote for an independent candidate right now, a third party candidate by a Democrat, is essentially going to help Donald Trump. It'll be a de facto vote for Donald Trump, and that concerns me.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible if there are Republicans who have no other Republican alternative and they simply will not vote for a Democratic candidate, it's possible they would lean into a third party, depending on who that was. But I don't know. Aren't we playing a game of chess here? Isn't it a strategic game to try to block the worst from happening, to choose the lesser of the evils instead of perhaps chasing the pie in the sky candidate who has no chance of winning?
Yeah, and there's another issue, is choosing the lesser of two evils. It boiled down to that for the past, since at least 2000 election, at least the 2000 election. Each one has seemed to have been voting for the lesser of two evils.
All right. I appreciate your opinion, and I appreciate you listening, and have a Happy New Year, okay?
Yep. Happy New Year. Blessed Yule.
Blessed Yule. Happy Festivus. All that good stuff. We'll see you later. 850, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hey, Seth. This is AJ Hernandez. I'm a lawyer in Florida, and I wanted to talk to you about a law that's being proposed in the state Congress here in Florida.
Okay.
And it has to do with Bible courses and a moment of silence. I live in Jacksonville, like I said, and my congresswoman that represents me in the state Congress is Kimberly Daniels, and she's with other people trying to pass this law that would require every school district in Florida to offer as an elective course a course that studies both the Old and New Testament. And I find it troubling, and I wanted your thoughts on it. And I'm working on a letter that I'm writing to her and the other sponsors of the bill, addressing what I see as the constitutional issues with this bill, as well as, I think as far as even Christians should be against this bill, because I think eventually if you're teaching the Old and New Testament in school, eventually these stories kind of will devolve culturally into being equal to mythological characters like we read in Greek mythology.
I think Daniels was behind the "In God We Trust" requirement for all schools to have that displayed in all public schools. And it was just a huge violation of the church-state line. If you're doing battle against religious overreach in Florida, I think it's important to have some big gun allies on your side, which means go to ffrf.org, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They have a legal page. They have a team of people who are constantly dealing with this kind of stuff. And they have attorneys and legal counsel and will often write a letter on your behalf or even perhaps bring a case against the school or against the state. It has happened. The American Humanist Association is the same way. I think it's AmericanHumanist.org. They have a legal page. I think if you have these people with all of the resources that you do not and that I do not, and they have the legal experience that we do not, and, they have a lot of experience doing this. I think it's important to ally with them, bring it to their attention, put it on the table and see what they bring. And they may be able to push you in the right direction. Perhaps you can join forces. Okay.
Yep. All right. Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right.
Seth.
Take care. Thank you. Florida. You're killing me. 306. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. It's Dan. How's it going?
Dan, Happy New Year. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind? What do you think about 2020?
Well, I was just wondering if you could help me understand something. I kind of started a quest for myself that, long story short, started finding out, for myself a few things, detaching myself from the indoctrination of parents, and that led me to atheism. And subsequently, it led me to veganism, too. And I'm just wondering what the holdup is with other atheists, how they don't attach the same, you spend an hour on the internet and you can find out that essentially it's destroying the planet, it's cruel to animals, and it's destroying your health. So I just have no idea, what the holdup is, man.
I'm sure the reasons are as varied as the people who hold them.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you for hearing my voice.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you for calling.
Take care, man.
I reject the idea that atheism requires anything else. We've always said atheism is the lack of a belief in God. And so is it automatic that somebody who walks away from superstition will decide that it's not okay to, quote unquote, harvest meat for food? For me, it comes down to the suffering question right now more than anything. The suffering of animals in these terrible conditions. But if you were able to eliminate the suffering, then the argument becomes, is it moral to kill a living thing for food? Natalie and I at this moment are not vegans, but I'll tell you, the vegans have made some compelling arguments and given us a lot to chew on, if you'll pardon the expression, a lot to think about. And, that's something that we're still committed to addressing. We're still actually navigating in our own life. As much as we love chicken and fish and steak and all that type of stuff, is there a moral question? I don't really know where we're going to fall. I'll tell you, we haven't decided yet, but I don't consider people on either side of the discussion to be terrible people or immoral people or necessarily irrational people, certainly religious people. I think everybody's journey is their own. We're taking our own journey, having our own conversations. We're going to come to our own decision, and I'll let you know where that shakes out. I have no problem with vegans whatsoever. I disagree with the guy in the comments section who typed just a few minutes ago that vegans are part of a cult, like there's a cult of veganism. There are zealots in any culture, no doubt. You'll find zealots in any cause, any culture, but I just think that's just crazy. If someone is vegan, good for them. That's a life choice they've made for themselves, and they are promoting it under the umbrella of their values, meaning they want to not kill another being for food, or they want to eliminate suffering, or whatever. Doesn't make them necessarily a zealot or part of a cult. I admire and respect that. The flip side of that coin is that I don't think people who actually choose to eat chicken, steak, fish, whatever, are terrible people who are religious about meat eating. I'm so tired of living in a world where we vilify people with these labels of the extreme. Why not bring these differences of position or opinion or perspective into the same space, a friendly space, and reason it out together? Let's reason it out together. And when we're done, let's remain friends and friendly. 720, hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Caleb out of Colorado. How are you doing, man?
Caleb, thanks for calling the show. Happy New Year. We're talking about the new year. You have high hopes, or are you bracing yourself?
I think it's a mixed bag, man. It's going to be weird. Some interesting conversations with the vegans and the meat eaters and everything. I was curious what you thought about them, the federal government raising the tobacco age. I just noticed that was a thing that I'm seeing in the gas stations and stuff.
Oh, hell if I know.
I find it interesting, just in the fact that it really, you didn't see any real public debate about this before all of a sudden, I think it was last week, it's just passed. I used to be a smoker. I smoked American Spirits, which, are the healthy organic cigarettes, the vegan cigarettes, you could say. But I'm sorry,
I've got a visual now of a vegan cigarette, and I'm going, what the hell is he talking about? Oh, sorry, forgive me. Go ahead.
No worries. I mean, I still use tobacco in the form of a snus, which is it's a smokeless tobacco that's produced in Sweden, which, from my research, is the lowest risk tobacco you can use. It's still tobacco. It's not great for you. But it's a harm reduction kind of deal. And to me, I don't know. I thought it was, I'm 30, so it doesn't affect me per se, but I'm curious about all the 18-year-olds that are already hooked on tobacco, and now suddenly the age is 21. Are they grandfathered, or are they going to be going to black market cigarette people, I guess?
You got me. All I know is that our parents came from a generation where they had candy cigarettes targeted to like 10-year-olds. So I mean, we've definitely evolved. We used to have smoking in restaurants. We had smoking on airplanes, for Pete's sake. I hate the smell. I do not like the idea of secondhand smoke. I hate what it does to your lungs, to your body, to the overall health of a culture, community, the human condition. But, am I the person to say that you can't do this to your body? I don't want to be that guy. I think if you're old enough to be drafted, you're probably old enough to smoke a cigarette. But
all right, Seth. Well, you have a great New Year. Thanks for talking with me, and everybody in the chat. Happy New Year.
All right, see you later, bro. I mean, I'm not a libertarian, but I have libertarian leanings when it comes to this kind of thing. Prohibition did not prohibit people from drinking alcohol. And if we're to be honest, the laws against drugs have not stopped people from obtaining and using drugs. And so while I do grieve over what these substances, what methamphetamine does to the body, what cocaine does to the body, what even excessive alcohol does to the body, and even realizing that the people who take substances are not islands unto themselves, and the negative consequences to them individually ripple out into their families and into their jobs and into their neighborhoods and whatever, I just find myself taking more of a libertarian stand on alcohol and drugs. If you're a legal adult and you choose to do it, I tend to fall in that direction. It's an imperfect position, I know. It doesn't certainly it doesn't solve the issues of addiction and those types of things. But people are going to get what people are going to get. People are going to do what people are going to do when it comes to alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. And I've just kind of fallen down on that line where if you're of legal age, then go ahead and it's on you. And I could very well be wrong on that score. It's just the best I have at the moment. You want some more listener calls? We shall do some more listener calls. I'm going to take another real short break. And when I come back, we go back to the switchboard. Thank you so much for listening to the Thinking Atheist podcast. Back in a sec. "2020 has begun. It's interesting to watch the pessimists, the optimists, and everybody in between scratching their head wondering what in the world's going to happen this year. Or maybe they're just thankful they survived last year. As we sort of talk to our listeners about their perspectives on 2020 and what's on their mind, we go back to the switchboard. 440, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, it's Lauren from Cleveland. How you doing?
I'm well. Happy New Year. What do you think about 2020?
Politically, I think 2020 is going to be one of the craziest years on record, and gee whiz, why would that be? My thought is just simply this. A, you've got the trial in the Senate, which is going to happen sooner or later. At some point or other, Nancy Pelosi is going to release the articles of impeachment. And whether McConnell can treat them as a hot potato or, attempt to do something with them or not, there's a lovely question mark right there. Another question mark, how many Republican senators are going to basically jump ranks and move over? And the other question is, there seems to be a thrust starting to come now regarding whether or not there is a secret ballot on the issue of impeachment or not, which I don't know if that's constitutional, but wow. I mean, if there were, it changes the playing field radically. And there's also the entertainment factor of Trump utterly losing his shit the second the possibility of a secret ballot comes up.
It doesn't take much these days. If Greta Thunberg can get him to lose his mind and you've got his campaign pasting his face over her body on a mock-up of Time magazine, the guy is pretty easily triggered. So you're right. It's going to be a roller coaster.
He's the prototypical ouch cube. I mean, it's automatic. But my sense is that he's going to survive the impeachment vote, whereupon fasten your seatbelt, return your seat backs and tray tables, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think he's going to be removed. He's not leaving office. He's going to have to be removed in the election in November.
Exactly.
But I think you're right. It would be, I definitely think you'd see a greater weight of nay votes if you had an anonymous vote in the Senate during the Senate trial. I'd like to see it happen just to see what happens, if you know what I mean.
So would I. But assuming he doesn't get removed, the intervening time between then and the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November, the word banana land comes to mind. And I just, my thought is at that point, just chop my wood, carry my water, keep my own house in order, and try not to go batshit insane at the madness, which we both know is coming.
Just dig a hole, put the shelter in, try to survive the next few years, and poke your head out occasionally to see what's going. See if the air is still breathable, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, Seth, hey, you're talking to a guy who was around during October of 1962, and the shelter building was for an entirely separate region. So be careful of that, please.
All right, well, we'll hope we don't see Banana Land in 2021, and I appreciate you so very much. Have a happy New Year.
Same back to you, Seth. Take very good care.
See you later. Banana Land sounds like a children's book. Banana Land. 647, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
My name is John. Actually, I'm calling you from Ontario, Canada.
John, I'm glad I'm not the only one on the show with the biblical name.
Right. Well, actually, since the last year, I've moved pretty strongly into my atheism, right? And I'm suddenly finding that it fills me with like a whole lot of anger. One of the things that inspired me to call you was yesterday me and my wife were cleaning out our closet, doing some Christmas cleaning, right? And we found her old stuff, her crosses and stuff from a baptism back when she was in high school. And normally that stuff wouldn't bother me looking at it, but looking at it, it's just like, you know, hey, can we throw this stuff all away, right? And didn't go too well, sort of thing. And we ended up compromising, putting it in a memory box along with the rest of the religious stuff. But does that anger ever go away?
I get this question a lot. Did the cross belong to her or to you?
To her. I moved up here to live with her, right?
Dude, yeah.
So all this stuff was hers.
You know, I think that's not a hill you want to die on. My opinion is if she wants to keep it for whatever reason, even if she wasn't religious and it was a sentimental thing, you know, that's her decision. Let her keep it. Let her do whatever. It's no skin off your teeth. I get that it carries a lot of baggage and perhaps reminds you of all the lies that we were taught when we were younger by that particular religion. So it's not that I'm insensitive to you, but I wouldn't attach too much meaning to that. I think, you know, let's fight another day kind of deal. As far as the anger goes, dude, it can go away. I think anger is a healthy response. In many ways, anger keeps me going. You know, when I see children indoctrinated, it makes me angry and it motivates me to try to do something about it. When I see the corruption in the Catholic Church or the pedophile priests and the cover-ups, you know, that justifiably angers me and it makes me motivated to speak out against it and to be an activist against it. When I see the overreach of the theocrats over the church-state line, when I see people like Joel Osteen down in Houston, Texas, who's got a net worth in the, I don't know how many millions of dollars he's worth, you know, spouting Jesus' name tax-free, it makes me angry. But I've done a better job in the last half decade of maintaining balance. If you're angry all the time, you're burning that fuse at both ends, you will totally burn out in short order. That's no way to live, okay? I think over the course of time, I suspect that you're going to soften a little bit and the wounds are going to heal a little bit and that you're going to have, you know, the nerves are going to be less sensitive when it comes to your former faith. And then when you feel anger, it won't be a defining anger that just makes you crazy and seems to take you over and it's on your mind 24/7. But you've got more balance so that you can, you know, enjoy the good stuff in life, that you can perhaps even more objectively assess religions, what they are, what they do, how they do it. So give yourself some credit and give yourself some time. I suspect you're going to be okay.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you for all you do, and I love the podcast. You really helped me out a lot.
It's greatly appreciated, and Happy New Year.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be pissed off. My first 2 years out of the faith, I just like, you lied to me. You know, my culture lied to me. My family lied to me. They didn't know it was a lie, but I was taught lies. I wasted decades of my life. I was promoting bad ideas on the radio, and I was producing videos that supported and funded churches. And I was just, you know, all the time. I had a difficult time letting it go. It was a very raw nerve. And over the course of time, I just wore myself out. You know, I needed better balance. I had to refocus and start living again. And I also found out that the people who are angry all the time and always shouting and always screaming and always outraging, you just get ignored. You're the busted car alarm. People will tune you out. People will stop listening to you. And if you want to be effective, you know, you don't want to be Chicken Little. You want to be angry when it's appropriate in a larger picture of trying to live this temporary life here on planet Earth. 617, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
It's Charles.
Charles, thanks for calling. Happy New Year. Any thoughts on the next 12 months?
Not so much. I'm not very optimistic with everything that's going on in the news, but I wanted to kind of circle back to the whole tobacco issue and kind of give you some clarity on that. You're saying that you didn't know so much about it, and I think as a former smoker, I can kind of clear that up for a lot of people. So,
well, I mean, what's your perspective? Let me hear it.
All right, so I'm 30. And being born in 1989, coming up in the 90s, you know, I got like the back end of all of the like the candy cigarettes, like you were saying, that were marketed back in the day. And I remember going into like a Chili's and other restaurants where there was a smoking and non-smoking section. And I think a lot of people don't remember how recent that really is. And so I'm not surprised that as I grew up, I started smoking. You know, my mom smoked, my dad smoked. It was just everywhere. And I think the point that people are missing, especially when they talk about, oh, it's my freedom to smoke or, you know, things like that. It's like, you still have to remember that like nicotine is a drug. And so when you classify it like that, it kind of brings you into a broader spectrum of how we should be regulating these things, because I'm also a medical cannabis user. And so I've seen, you know, the DEA go to dispensaries and take the cannabis from cancer patients, you know, and it's crazy to think that we'll allow tobacco companies to not just sell this product, because it's deeper than that. Like they have to use a whole bunch of land, you know, space that people could otherwise be occupying with their homes or other businesses, all of the water and other resources that go towards tending the tobacco. And I mean, you know, they'll say like, oh, but it's jobs. But, you know, when you weigh the risk reward, it's not beneficial in that aspect. And so I understand people will say like, oh, you know, but, you know, it's my right to, you know, smoke cigarettes like it's my right to drink alcohol. And I saw someone in the chat say, well, if you're going to, you know, it doesn't make any sense to ban tobacco if you don't ban alcohol. But tobacco is the way alcohol works. You know, if you drink in moderation and, you know, things like that, you're not over consuming, your risk for things like cancer are very low, you know, and minor lifestyle changes can mitigate that even further. But with tobacco, with cigarettes and nicotine, it's just cancer, you know, like when you smoke, that is pretty much the end result. It's something that's always in the back of your mind every time you light up and you say, well, maybe it'll be this one that does it. But then when you get the cancer, you go, well, it doesn't matter. I already have it, so I'm going to continue to smoke. Like, it's this weird circle of illogical thinking that people keep themselves in to kind of justify something that they can't explain, you know, which is basically the fact that tobacco and cigarettes have been around for so long. You know, the Native Americans will tell you it's, you know, part of their culture and everything. But with what we know so much, you know, what we know with science and things like that in this day and age, I feel like this is something that we should be able to move on from. And it's weird to be someone who participated in it and then came out of it, you know, kind of like the religious aspect, to look back and watch everyone say like, yeah, we know it's harmful, but we're just not going to talk about it. We're just going to let everybody do what they want to do for the sake of tradition, regardless of how many people it hurts, you know?
I don't think it's a tradition argument. I think it's more of a individual choice argument. What would your solution be? Would it be to just make it illegal across the board?
So that's what I would prefer, but I think the goal is to have the conversation and say, look, if you're going to smoke tobacco, you're not really getting anything out of it, you know? Like, if you want to smoke, let's say, like the CBD, you know, they have like, you know, THC, CBD when it comes to the medical cannabis. CBD is non-psychoactive, and it also has other benefits to your body. Your body has an endocannabinoid system. And so if your argument is, well, it's my freedom to smoke cigarettes so I can relax and blah, 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 like, you're not really relaxing when you're smoking. And as a former smoker, you know, it's kind of just like it's the addiction. You're just waiting till your next cigarette, as opposed to, oh, I'm having a hard day. Let me relieve my anxiety. The anxiety comes from not having the substance as opposed to using a substance to relieve oneself.
You and I agree that a world without cigarettes would be a better world. We totally line up on that one. And if I'm looking at the comment section, they are definitely thinking and speaking their minds on it. So thanks for making it part of the broadcast, and we'll chew on it out here in the ether, okay?
Thank you, Seth. Have a good one.
All right, you take care. 863, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Marcy.
Hi, Marcy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year from Central Florida.
Oh, Florida. You guys.
I know. Yeah. I happen to be a political scientist. I teach at a local college here, and I just thought I'd let you all know that there cannot be any secret votes in the Senate or the House. They have to be public.
Oh, shit.
I
mean,
so
I guess
know,
I'm probably glad because you want to protect the system. I get that. But
well, I don't. Sometimes I think politics was better when a lot of it was secret, because then they could make deals and not have to be held accountable by the public.
It's a double-edged sword, though, because if they're making deals, then they're making deals, and now there's a lot of clandestine stuff that's not under the public spotlight.
Yeah. And also, just a note, and I want everyone, of course, to do their research, but if there's one health improvement everyone can make that will make a significant difference, is to stop eating processed carbohydrates and grains. It all turns to sugar, and sugar is the problem in our bodies. It leads to metabolic disorder and diabetes and heart disease and all of it. It's all about sugar and insulin.
We knocked back
please do your research.
Carbs in our diet and had some success with that, and we feel better.
Absolutely.
I'm a fan of sugar. I love sweet things. I know. Well,
discover erythritol and a couple of other healthy sugar substitutes.
We got into, is it called xylitol? Starts with an X. I think it's xylitol, something like that. That's a sugar substitute.
Don't do xylitol.
Don't do xylitol? What's wrong with xylitol?
That's right. It's a sugar alcohol that can have a glycemic response.
All right. What was the other one?
Erythritol.
Erythritol. All right. Now I got to go check this out.
Yeah.
I'm not. Now, forgive me. I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm going to have to go out and do some research on it. Erythritol.
I want you to.
Okay.
Yeah. And also check out a website called Virta Health. They're doing lots of research on diabetes and not eating carbs and how that helps, and has reversed type 2 diabetes in hundreds of patients, and they have long-term studies. And
the United States, the culture we have here, we do love our processed foods and we love our sweets, do we not?
Yeah, and that's been the problem for the last 50 years.
Well, I like the idea of having a healthier life. It burdens the system less. I think it contributes to a greater quality of life, perhaps a longer life. So, we'll certainly check into it.
And much healthier. Wouldn't it be great to avoid diabetes and all the rest of that?
All right, there's someone in the chat mentioned stroopwafels. So I'm guessing those aren't on the list of. No, never mind.
I don't know.
No, stroopwafels are not. Trust me.
Okay, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Thanks for calling. See you later. That's a New Year's resolution worth making. Treat yourself occasionally, but don't define yourself by sugar, processed sugar. Oh, that's a tough one too, because when you sprinkle it over that sugary dust over a confection, a cookie, sweet ice cream. They've got a frozen custard place just down the road. Oh, yeah. Oh, they've got a pumpkin pie frozen custard where they actually put an entire piece of pumpkin pie in the custard and blend it. And it is amazing. It's probably 2,000 calories, but it's amazing. It's interesting she said that about sugar. The New York Times just published an article a few days ago with the 7-Day Sugar Challenge. Make 2020 the year of less sugar. From the article, while you might not think you're eating much sugar, chances are you're eating a lot more than you realize. Added sugar lurks in nearly 70% of packaged foods and is found in breads, health foods, snacks, yogurts, most breakfast foods, and sauces. The average American eats about 17 teaspoons of added sugar a day, not counting the sugars that occur naturally in foods like fruit or dairy products. That's about double the recommended limit for men and triple the limit for women. For children, the limit should be about 3 teaspoons of added sugar, no more than 6, depending on the age and caloric needs. There's a linked speech, a lecture, called Sugar, the Bitter Truth by a guy named Dr. Robert Lustig, professor of pediatric endocrinology at the University of California. He says that the case against sugar is as strong as the case against smoking or excess alcohol. Too much sugar in your diet doubles your risk of heart disease, even for those who aren't overweight. Added sugar has been implicated in an increased risk for type 2 diabetes, cancer, stroke, even Alzheimer's. About a third of American adults and 13% of children have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition linked to added sugar consumption on the rise. Anyway, you can find the article easily. Just type in New York Times sugar, and it should pop right up. The article released on December 30th of 2019. Let's see, 515, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Eloise.
Eloise, appreciate you calling so much. Happy New Year. Any thoughts on 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about actually previous two callers talking about smoking and eating better, and it all to me just comes back to income inequality and how the working conditions and lack of funds forces people into basically quick fixes.
So if you're on lower fixed income, you're buying a lot of these cheap, boxed, processed foods, especially if you're feeding a family. You say they have fewer resources.
Most definitely. I actually had to eat from the food pantry for about 2 years. And most of what you get is either almost expired or just boxed. And so you really don't have a lot of options. And even now, my income isn't the best. And I have to decide, okay, today I'm going to eat healthy, but tomorrow it's a boxed dinner.
You know what got me when I was looking at some of those is the sodium of many of those foods. You look at the salt and it's crazy.
It really is.
Well, I mean, are you doing all right these days? You have some high hopes? Do you have optimism about the new year at all?
I have optimism in the sense of the up-and-coming adults. I don't imagine the current state of things getting past them, at the very least, because I'm a millennial and we're sick of it, and they're even more sick of it. It's just, I don't know, it's one of those, I grew up, I would say probably upper middle class. So I've kind of been on both sides of the fence, I guess. And there's something to be said about how cigarettes are marketed, who they're marketed toward, who they were originally marketed toward. I don't know if you knew this, but they were actually marketed towards psych patients.
I'm sorry. They're marketed toward who?
Patients in psych wards, like hospitals. They were being sold to.
At one point in our history, did this happen?
I'm not sure when, but so a lot of people that have psychological problems, they go hand in hand, smoking, and yeah, it's just another instance of, well, I just worked 40 hours on my feet, and well, I kind of have to disagree. A cigarette is sort of a break. It's not a good break. It's not a good solution.
Yeah, it brings
it's a maladaptive coping skill, if you will.
Back to your comment about the younger generation. So you look at like the Parkland kids who are going out against the NRA and people like climate activist Greta Thunberg, that generation, the young people who are coming into adulthood. You see them as game changers, perhaps world changers for the decades to come.
I do. I think the impact of millennials is limited, but I think the up-and-coming ones, they've been talking about what they're sick of even before they were adults, which I think is the big difference. They're so much more aware of the world. I think that has to do with like Snapchat and things like that I didn't grow up with.
Well, they have resources. They have information we didn't have at their fingertips. I'd like to see more using it, but I share in your optimism that, many of that generation are going to be game changers. We've seen it in terms of the defeat of religion. These young people are not engaging or walking away from superstition. And they are saying to the church, we want none of it. And I take a lot of comfort in that. And I'm excited about what that represents for them, for their kids, for their grandkids. So something to look for in 2020 and beyond. I hope you have a wonderful new year. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
All right. See you later. 214. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Sarah. How are you, man?
Sarah, I'm good. What's going on with you?
Not much. Just hanging out, enjoying my new year. How about you?
About the same. I'm looking forward with optimism. I'm also a little bit terrified, probably much like everybody else. Do you have any thoughts about 2020?
Oh, yeah. I'm not terrified at all. I personally like to see the good in things. I wanted to call in because the other caller was talking about cigarettes and kind of downplayed alcohol quite a bit. And I wanted to clarify a little bit about alcohol and how it is just as dangerous as cigarettes. I don't want people to be thinking that you can drink socially. A lot of people are born with a genetic gene, like a gene that is the addict gene. And once they take that first drink, that's it for them. And that was me. And about 51 days ago, when I laid down the bottle for good, that I overdosed on it, and I almost lost my life to it. And I want to make sure that people in this chat know that it is just as dangerous. Addiction is addiction across the board.
Statistically, alcohol responsible for half of all highway deaths, at least here in the United States. Yeah. So the danger may not come directly to the body. If you drink the glass of wine at the end of the day, it might be good for your heart if those statistics are still true. But there are other dangers.
Probably not.
I get that. So yeah, point taken.
Yeah. But on the optimism of 2020, yeah, I absolutely have a ton of high hopes for our generation. I'm a millennial, but I'm just on that verge of being Gen Z. Like, I was born in 1995, so I'm like right on the edge. And it is really cool to be on that edge because, yeah, it's going to take me more time to get my plans together because right now I'm trying to sort out some stuff, with the generation above me, my parents. It's, I have to sort out all of that superstition and that really backwards thinking before I can go ahead and make the difference I want to make in the world. I personally think mental health in this country is just mental health care is a joke, and it's absolutely horrible. Like the last person was saying about marketing cigarettes to, patients who have mental illness. And it's been rough for me to find a job because I do have mental illness, addiction, a lot of other crap too that I don't want to mention, but it's been a very difficult time trying to get over that. But I think I might have more of an edge being on the, on the border of it, of being Gen Z and millennial, because I'm going to be more mature. I'm going to be more developed by the time I get to do what I want to do, which is become a counselor and raise mental health awareness. And that's something that was my calling. And I think that a lot of people, even millennials, are still able to make a difference. And I have very high hopes for the future. We look at 50 years ago, the percentage of the U.S. that's religious, much higher than today, right? So like the lady was saying, people are leaving religion. And that was my generation too. And I do think that millennials are responsible for cleaning this mess up of a world. And I think that even your generation and generations above mine are responsible too. And it's just all about if you take that responsibility on an individual level.
Did I hear you right that you are, is it 51 days sober? Is that how I would say it? Or
Yeah, it's 51 days clean. That's how I see it. But
congratulations.
Yeah, I've been clean. Thank you. It's been a wonderful journey. I got on a great medication that helped me to resist my cravings, which is the hardest part of quitting drinking, is the cravings. And it's been very good. And if anybody out there is, looking to quit, there's medication for it. It might be hard to find someone who will prescribe it because it's really underplayed for good reason. Alcohol companies don't make money, do they, if we all quit? So
did you find, did you replace it with another habit, or was it just the medication? I mean, I'm just curious about your journey out of that addiction.
Yeah, it was, well, first of all, I actually rewired a thought, which is a therapy I did for one of my other disorders. I rewired a thought to be terrified of alcohol, basically, because it was easy to do, because it almost took my life. Like, I quit breathing for like 2 minutes, and that was enough for me to just keep that thought at the forefront of my mind all the time. And when I see alcohol, now I'm repulsed by it. And on top of that, I had the medicine to help me out as well, because I was really heavy into it. Obviously, I overdosed. I mean, that's not an everyday thing for even an alcoholic to do. And it was like, I've tried quitting so many times. I went to rehab. I did all sorts of things, tried AA, but that was a little too religious for me, having to rely on a higher power when I don't believe in one.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was medicine and then that thought.
You are doing okay today?
Yeah, I'm doing good today. It's a good day today.
You encourage me. You know, and I think you've encouraged a lot of people here. I'm watching again. The chat is scrolling. And everybody's like, yeah, good for you. And you inspire them. And I think it's a great way to cap the broadcast today. So thanks for sharing that part of your journey. And I hope it continues in 2020 and a whole lot of other good stuff. Okay.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful New Year.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's a big step. Big life change. Whether she wrapped it around, a specific date or occasion or just a decision. She did it on her terms, and she is 51 days in and still kicking, and I think we can all draw some encouragement from that. To you and yours, have a wonderful 2020, and yeah, I'm going to keep some optimism for the new year. Optimism that we will evolve. We will evolve in terms of our technology, that we will see hopefully a return to reason where there has been sort of a wealth of unreason. And that we'll see advances in medicine, that we'll see advances in our laws and the protections of human rights across the board, and in the promotion of science and the evidence, especially in the shadow of these long-standing religious institutions who are losing their grasp on power. It's happening in front of us, and it will continue to happen in 2020. And that's some really good news to finish with. I'll see you back here next time. Have a great week.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming Free Thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.